Hey, it's Matt Sager on a busy news day. A lot going on all at once, a lot to take in. And this first bit of news is entirely based on hearsay, innuendo, not even specifics. So I want to be careful here. It's never fun to kill your idols. But in particular, until I have the facts about just what went on with Joss Whedon and the cast of the Justice League, specifically Cyborg actor Ray Fisher, and apparently some others. All I have to go on is what was said at the time when they originally did their junkets, did their press at Comic-Con 2017, and what Ray Fisher is saying now on Twitter, which are two very, very different things. The other thing I've got to say is I'm a massive Joss Whedon fan. Never met him. Heard terrible things about him. Also heard some wonderful things about him. The only thing I can contribute as an observer to this is that I can tell you I am someone who has been blessed to work with a lot of my idols, a lot of my heroes, a lot of people I've admired in various industries, be it radio, music, voiceover. And about 65% of the time, it is exactly the dream you envision it to be. There are these great mentors, or it's a mutual admiration society. They take direction from you. They offer you advice. It's a great working relationship. Everybody goes home happy. Maybe you even stay friends. Maybe 10% of the time, they surpass your wildest expectations, become a parental figure, a friend for life, someone who advocates for you, and vice versa. It can be a life-changing experience. 25% of the time, it can be a nightmare. It's always extra hard when someone who you've got this great set of expectations for, someone who you've already created this character around them, maybe because you've seen their work and you think that they're like their character, or you've seen them in interviews and they come across as really charming, or they're writers, and you think, wow, this person writes my life. I can't wait to befriend them. And they turn out to be monsters, or you just don't get along on some fundamental level, or they're misogynists, or they're workplace harassers. It can run the gamut from simply not getting along, to being a disappointing relationship, to being really one of torment, where you walk away hating this person that you came in really with a predisposition to love. So I have seen that happen, and Joss Whedon certainly has been a hero of mine. I thought his Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel were incredible pieces of fiction, really great pieces of TV. I think they propelled the medium of TV and film forward. He spoke at the time of his creation of Buffy the Vampire Slayer of having a feminist agenda. Buffy premiered at the time of, for instance, the Spice Girls. And he spoke of watching them talk about girl power while acting a little bit silly and goofy and thinking that's not girl power. Girl power would be if in a monster movie, a girl walked into an alley followed by a bunch of monsters. And when she emerged, the monsters were all dead and she was just fine because she had beat their ass that bad. That was certainly his talking point. He said it in many interviews. He said it pretty much any opportunity he got. I'm not disinclined to believe him, but I've heard some stuff. I don't love everything he's done. I don't think it's a particularly controversial opinion to say that Justice League, which Joss Whedon came on and directed after Zack Snyder had to step down mid-project because of a terrible family tragedy, the suicide of his daughter, it's not controversial to say that that movie was a giant stinking mess. And I don't know whose feet to lay that blame on. Is it DC for rushing a release date, mixing together the work of two directors with very different styles? Is it Zack Snyder, who kind of had a checkered past with DC already? Certainly in my eyes, I did not think his portrayals of Superman and Batman were very good. In Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, I thought he was obsessed with The Dark Knight Returns. He'd been very vocal about that, in fact, for years, and that had colored his entire image of what DC heroes could and should be. I also thought that these movies were affected deeply by Zack Snyder's deeply rooted philosophy of objectivism, one which does sneak into just about every movie he makes, the philosophy espoused by Ayn Rand, one of selfishness, and one in which super beings, people with extra talents or superpowers, should not really be inclined to use them to help people. They should use them to help themselves, protect themselves. I thought that his DC movies were not good. But at the end of the day, the final product was one put together by Joss Whedon, who you can't help but note didn't seem to be all that excited to put his signature on the final product. Didn't do much press involving it. Took great care to, in the very earliest moments of the movie, linger on a shot of a homeless man looking disheveled, without hope, and displaying a sign with the handwritten words, "I tried." Not subtle messaging from Joss Whedon, who, if nothing else, is a master of subtext. So, whoever's fault Justice League was, look, we're all awaiting the Snyder Cut. I think Zack Snyder's kind of getting a little bit of a lucky workaround for that because he's now had years to ruminate on the mistakes he was making. He's got a very low bar to clear to make a better movie of the Snyder Cut than the Justice League, which we got to see in theaters. He's had years to see the DC Extended Universe evolve and move on under others' stewardship. So he's gotten to see Wonder Woman bring more hope to the DC Extended Universe. He's gotten to see Shazam and Aquaman bring more lightheartedness to it. So now he's got a leg up. And we look forward, I certainly do, to seeing the Snyder Cut on HBO Max in 2021. But at the time of the Justice League's theatrical release, Ray Fisher appeared at the 2017 Comic-Con and had a lot of very nice things to say about Whedon, all of which he has taken back. First in a tweet released June 29th, in which he includes a video of himself sitting next to Jason Momoa, aka Aquaman, at SDCC. He plays back this video of himself praising Whedon next to an actually irked-looking Momoa who doesn't appear to agree with him. That's worth noting. But he tweeted that video on June 29th, accompanied by the text, "I'd like to take a moment to forcefully retract every bit of this statement." That statement included words like, "Joss is a great guy, and Zack picked a good person to come in and finish up for him." So all those compliments have been officially and rather forcefully retracted. Now, yesterday, Wednesday, July 1st, Fisher tweeted out, quote, "Whedon's on-set treatment of the cast and crew of Justice League was gross, abusive, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable. He was enabled in many ways." Yeah, he's naming names. "He was enabled in many ways by producers Jeff Johns and John Berg." All this at a time when Fisher's been tweeting and talking about Cyborg and the Justice League quite a bit, espousing his excitement for the upcoming Snyder Cut, and on June 6th, tweeting, quote, "I don't praise writer Chris Terrio and Zack Snyder for simply putting me in Justice League. I praise them for empowering me, a black man with no film credits to his name, with a seat at the creative table and input on the framing of the stones before there was even a script." So we don't have details about this gross, unacceptable behavior of Whedon's, but it would not exactly be unprecedented, again, according to stories. Rather a lot of them by this point, and it's depressing. Every one of the allegations leveled against Joss Whedon is very disheartening. It's impossible for me to know whether or not to believe them, other than that some of them are coming from very close to home, and that they are fairly consistent in the types of behavior he's being accused of. And in fact, one of the ongoing Joss Whedon controversies, there is an entire catalog of them, in an article published online in The Cut yesterday titled "A Brief Tour of Joss Whedon's Many Controversies." I'll link to that article in this episode's description, but one thing I do remember from the otherwise generally amazing TV show Angel was a recurring trope that did not appear to be an accident, not to be an homage to any sort of other stories that preceded it, like, for instance, the very similar Captain Marvel storyline taking place in a very rough and poorly executed period of the Avengers, in which she became impregnated with this alien offspring that is born as an adult, whom she falls in love with. It's creepy, gross, and very destructive, and the opposite of feminism. I don't think this was any sort of homage to that, but in every season of Angel, and sometimes multiple times per season of Angel, Cordelia, played by Charisma Carpenter, would have this awful demonic pregnancy from which the gang, Angel, Wesley, Gunn, would have to save her from before ultimately she was written off the show by, you guessed it, a mystical pregnancy hatched full-born that killed her. That is relevant in this list of Joss Whedon's many controversies, because the first one listed is, quote, "Fans have speculated that Whedon fired an actor over her pregnancy." Actor Charisma Carpenter played a pivotal role on Whedon's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, as well as its spin-off Angel. Ahead of season 4 of Angel, this is the one where she died of pregnancy. Ahead of season 4 of Angel, however, Carpenter informed production that she was pregnant, which is allegedly when things began to deteriorate. In the fourth season, her character's story arc took a strange turn for the outlandishly evil, culminating with a coma from which she never emerged. At the time, viewers wondered if Carpenter had been written out of the series because of her pregnancy. Speculation appeared to refute in a 2003 interview with TV Guide. He said that Carpenter's storyline had simply played itself out, adding that any reported tensions between himself and the actor were, quote, stuff between us and not stuff that I would talk about in an interview. In 2009, however, Carpenter suggested that her pregnancy had indeed been a factor in her departure from Angel. She says, quote, what happened was that my relationship with Joss became strained. This is at an interview she gave at DragonCon of that year to The Telegraph. She went on to say, quote, we all go through our stuff in general, and I was going through my stuff, and then I became pregnant. And I guess in his mind, he had a different way of seeing the fourth season go. She goes on to say, quote, I think Joss was honestly mad. I think he was mad at me, and I say that in a loving way, which is, it's a very complicated dynamic working for somebody for so many years. And expectations, and also being on a show for 8 years. You gotta live your life. And sometimes living your life gets in the way of maybe the creator's vision for the future. And that becomes conflict, and that was my experience. Carpenter later spoke to Complex in 2018, saying that production did not sufficiently account for her pregnancy in setting the schedule, compounding her devolving relationship with Whedon. She told them, quote, it wasn't necessarily graceful on either side, so it was difficult, I think, for them to accomplish what they needed to accomplish with a female lead in the position I was in, but these things can be done, and they have been done, and they've been done gracefully in the past with other productions, I'm sure, so that's not good. Another ugly Whedon episode, Whedon's ex-wife has accused him of posturing as a feminist to hide his infidelities. Yeah, when this story broke, I remember the wildly popular Whedon blog/message board Whedonesque shut down when they got this news. In 2017, his ex-wife, Kai Cole, wrote an essay for The Wrap addressing the couple's divorce after what had been a 16-year marriage. She described Whedon's eventual admission in a letter she says he wrote toward the end of their relationship, in which he confesses to over a decade's worth of cheating on her. He writes, quote, as a guilty man, I knew the only way to hide was to act as though I were righteous. It's not just like I killed you, but that I'd done it subtly over the years, that I'd been poisoning you, chipping away at you. That sounds like evil genius talk. That sounds like Joss Whedon's supervillain dialogue. Kai Cole told The Wrap, quote, he deceived me for 15 years so he could have everything he wanted. I believed, everyone believed, that he was one of the good guys, committed to fighting for women's rights, committed to our marriage, and to the women he worked with. But I now see how he used his relationship with me as a shield, both during and after our marriage, so no one would question his relationships with other women or scrutinize his writing as anything other than feminist. Whedon kind of argued with some of the substance of that letter via a rep, but ultimately said, out of respect, no comment. His first Wonder Woman script, the one that he wrote and was rejected in 2006, it leaked online right before Wonder Woman was released in theaters in 2017 and has been just ravaged for what is perceived to be anything but feminist. Rather misogynistic, in fact. There are clips and segments of this script available all over the internet. A simple Google search for Joss Whedon Wonder Woman script yielded me many results. Many of them, I have to agree, come off as pretty male-gazy, but I don't know that it was a different time is really a defense, but for what it's worth, it was a different time. It doesn't read like a guy who's all about girl power wrote this script, but there are all kinds of potential reasons for that in Whedon's defense. And all of this is allegations. I'm not saying that to protect Joss Whedon. I'm saying that to protect myself, because I'm going off of stuff I'm reading on the internet, hearsay, second and third parties' opinions, none of whom I know personally. So I'm not taking a stand. I'm simply looking at what evidence is available to me, and it looks kind of troubling to me. But 2006 was a time when different studio heads were in power, and perhaps, in Whedon's defense, were not as amenable to reading scripts that were very centered around truly strong women. Maybe to get the ear, the eye, the attention of a studio head, you still had to talk old Hollywood talk a little bit. Let's remember, Me Too, Time's Up, generally speaking, the awakening of representation and of powerful women and of greater inclusion. This story and its embodying in our culture and our understanding and implementation of it is all very, very new, happening very quickly. So I'm not ready to crap all over Joss Whedon's admittedly poorly aged Wonder Woman script without a little bit more context. But simply reading this article in The Cut, describing a brief tour of Joss Whedon's many controversies, is deflating for someone like me who's a fan, and who has always speculated that there really was some nasty behind-the-scenes subtext going on that required Cordelia to get pregnant with malignant demons and spirits on about every third episode of Angel. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a cute recurring story trope. There was something going on there. I truly believe that. As to what specifically has changed Ray Fisher's view of Whedon and soured him on Whedon, calling him completely unacceptable, hopefully he will expand upon that in more tweets or in a forthcoming article of some kind. I want to know more of the story. For his part, once again, Joss Whedon has no comment. So I do look forward, as I said, to the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. It can't possibly be worse than the version we saw in theaters, and that's not necessarily attributable to any fault of Snyder's or Whedon's. It just simply was a terrible movie due to all sorts of reasons. Ultimately, the blame can only truly be laid at the feet of Time Warner, its parent corporation AT&T, and the people at DC who greenlit it. I would like to know what it is exactly that Whedon did that was terrible, whether it fits into a pattern of behavior he's exhibited on other projects like Buffy, Angel, Dollhouse, Firefly, Serenity, The Avengers. I'd like to see if actors, crew members, writers, producers who've worked with Whedon in the past would come forward and negatively, positively, or neutrally say anything about what it is like to work with him, women in particular. I would hate to lose so much respect for a creator that has meant so much to me, but as I said in the preamble to this episode, it would hardly be the first time. And I'm certainly inclined to believe Ray Fisher. The only thing is, he was saying largely positive things about Whedon prior to now, and there's been a couple years in between. Has he thought more about it? Has he worked on more projects and seen what a truly respectful director is like, and in hindsight changed his mind about Whedon? Like, what is going on that would change his opinion so dramatically? I'm sure the answer to that is key to unraveling this story. That and Fisher remarking forward, because as of now, Whedon is remaining silent on all of it. As for you, if you've got any thoughts on this or any other subject, please comment. If you're checking this out on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. If you're listening on a podcast app, please subscribe there and leave me reviews. Check out this episode's description for links to my social media, which you can follow. You can also support this podcast. Links are provided as to how you can do that as well. Thanks a lot, and I'll talk with you soon.